Hello and welcome back to Weaving Weird Studio. My name is Sig and this is my channel. Today we're going to get back to basics. Today I'm going to start a series of beginner tutorials. So for those people who really want to learn how to crochet, this is going to be the series for you. For those individuals who crocheted a little bit in the past but would like to have a bit of a refresher course, this is also the tutorial series. So before we begin, you are going to need to get yourself some worsted weight yarn. It doesn't have to be expensive. In fact, it could be the cheapest stuff you can find. It's just for practice. And anything will do you, as long as it's worsted weight. And the reason why I'd like you to use worsted weight is because I'm also going to have you use a size G hook. Now, the size G hook is not only going to work well with the worsted weight yarn, it's also going to be fairly comfortable in your hand, especially as a beginner. So this is a really good combination to start off with. Next, if you enjoy this channel and you would like to receive more content, or at least be notified of more content, then please hit the subscribe button. We would love to have you. In addition, if you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button. And as usual, I'm completely and always open to any comments, suggestions, or questions you might have, and I always do my best to get back to you just as quickly as possible. So without too much more, let's get started. It is a size G hook and a hook gauge. That's always important. Stitch markers. Scissors. And some worsted weight yarn. Okay, so now the first thing we're going to do is we're actually going to test the size of our hook. It's strongly recommended to use a G-size hook because that seems to be the most comfortable for most people to hold, and it works very well with the worsted weight yarn. The gauge, or the hook gauge, has many functions. You have these holes which help you to gauge the hook, and I'll explain why that's important here in a minute. It also helps you to gauge your stitches, make your corners properly. It will give you centimeters and millimeters as well as inches. And it'll also give you some gauge recommendations for your knitting. It's just super handy tool. And you'll find that it's indispensable when it comes to making the pieces right, so they don't turn out wonky. So you have some control over what the finished product is going to look like. So the first thing I want to do is check the size of my hook. Now, the problem with hooks is that while many countries are making an attempt to make the hooks all a standard size, they really aren't. Some of the retro hooks and some of the antique hooks, they're just quite frankly all over the board. And in fact, even in Ireland, when Irish crochet became very popular and a thing that many families had to do in order to bring in a few extra dollars and try to make ends meet during the potato famine, they weren't going out and buying hooks. What they were doing was they were actually getting a wire that was maybe the approximate size of what they needed and bending the end to make a hook so that they could actually do the Irish crochet. So even today, even after 200 years, we are still trying to figure out how we're going to make our hooks all consistent, and that's probably not going to happen. As it stands here in the US, our hooks, we size our hooks by the alphabet, and in Europe they size their hooks by millimeters, and then you have half millimeters and and quarter millimeters, and then you have steel hooks, and steel hooks are actually for lace work, but there are steel hooks that will actually overlap a regular yarn hook that you would use for standard crochet. And so sometimes that can get a little tricky for people. So the first thing we're going to do with this gauge is to make sure that my G hook is actually a G hook size, or at least a legitimate 4 millimeters. And I'm going to use this, I'm going to put this through, And as you can see, the head of my hook doesn't even fit into the hole. And so that tells me that this hook is too big, right? It's not going to give me the exact size of the stitch that I want. So I'm going to go and I'm going to take the next hook down. Now this hook, they say, is a 5. It's a 3.75 millimeter, an American F. And I'm going to try this hook in the G slot, and that actually fits. And so you can see how that hole is the same diameter as the diameter of the hook itself. And that's what we're looking for. So in fact, a true, oops, now I'm stuck. Okay, there we go. A true 4 millimeter hook actually, or a 4 millimeter size hook, whatever, is going to be my size F hook in this particular brand. And then I'll show you what the stitches look a little different. I know you're probably thinking a 0.25 millimeter difference isn't going to be huge, but you know, it really is. So the next thing I want to touch on is holding the hook. There's more than 2 ways to hold a hook, but the 2 most common ways to hold a hook is the pencil hold or the pencil grip. And a lot of people are trained like this, or the knife grip. Personally, I use the knife grip. Sometimes I'll use the pencil grip if while I'm working, I start getting tired or my hand starts getting tired. So I'll switch over to the pencil grip to give the muscles that I've been using with the knife grip a little bit of a rest. But usually I work with a pencil grip. This is something you're going to have to practice with, and you're going to have to determine for yourself what works best for you. And we will talk about the stitch markers here in just a little bit. I haven't forgotten them. So the first thing we want to do is a slip knot. Now there are many ways to do a slip knot. There's all sorts of techniques out there. But for me, I just simply do this as a slip knot, right? I take my yarn and I just put it over my hook and I hold this with my thumb. I pull the yarn behind the tail and then over the hook. Then I hold the tail with my finger and my thumb and I pull that loop right on through, and that creates my slip knot. You may have a different way to do that, and that's completely and perfectly okay. The next thing I want to touch on is hands. You really want to try and keep your hands relaxed. That'll be for a couple of reasons. One, the more relaxed your hands are, the longer you'll be able to crochet without any discomfort. And then 2, it'll help tremendously with maintaining a consistent tension with your yarn. And that's extremely important for your stitches, for your stitch consistency. So for me, the way I take care of the tension of my yarn is I will wrap it around my little pinky and then once around my forefinger. So you can see kind of how that looks. And then as I crochet, right, it just sort of pulls the yarn along, you know, and that works for me. Now, there are plenty of people who find that too many wraps. So there are people who will just hold it in their pinky like this and then bring it over their hand like that. There are some people who will wrap it several times over their front finger. Me, I'll do whatever I need to do depending on the yarn I'm working with, because sometimes yarn is more slick than others. Sometimes there's more friction between the yarn and your skin. So all this is going to affect the tension. The size of the yarn, whether it's a crochet thread or a worsted weight yarn, that's going to also determine how many wraps you're going to do in order to control the tension. And this takes practice. You're going to need to experiment and you're going to need to practice in order to find your sweet spot, in order to find what works for you and gives you the results you are looking for. So the next thing we're going to hit in this tutorial is going to be the chain stitch. right? And before, and before we do a chain stitch, I want to touch upon yarn over. Okay. Yarn over is a technique that you're going to see in every stitch you do, where you basically pull the yarn over and then you pull it through your stitch. Yarn over, pull through the stitch. The yarn is going to come from the back of the hook over the front of the hook and then through the stitch. What you want to avoid doing is running that yarn in the wrong direction. So running it front to the back and then pulling it through. Running the front to the back and then pulling it through. That's not, that is definitely something you will eventually run into in some stitches. It's called yarn under. However, for most your stitches and for where you are at today, yarn over is what you want to do every time. Yarn over is what's going to make your stitch look like the stitch it is supposed to look like. And you're going to know it's yarn over because it will be indicated in the abbreviation with the abbreviation of YO. Now making the chain. So let me go and pull this out. So to begin with the chain, you're going to want to get your tension right, and you're going to want to hold your hook. You're going to want to use your middle finger and your thumb to hold the tail of your yarn, just like that. And then you're going to do a yarn over, and you're going to pull through. Yarn over, pull through. That's 2 chain stitches. Yarn over, pull through. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So as you can see, those chain stitches are pretty consistent. When you count the chain stitches, you're never going to count the loop on the hook or the slip knot as a stitch. You're always going to count the next stitch from the hook. And so that's going to be this one right here. So it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. You're also going to know each stitch because the front side of your work, of your chain stitch, it's going to look like a V. So each V is going to represent a stitch. That's you can count it certainly like that when you're looking at it from the front. Each V is going to count as a stitch. When you turn it over, you're going to notice you have this thread, this ridge right here that runs the length of the chain, or that runs the length of the stitch. You can also count that. Some people suggest that you can just count by filling the ridges along the back, or you can count by counting each length, each ridge. So that's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Okay, so now we're going to come to where I'm going to discuss stitch markers. So in a long chain, it's easy to lose count. And it certainly isn't very helpful when you lose count. It can kind of be a pain. It can really be frustrating sometimes. So if you're going to do a long chain, it's a smart idea to place a stitch marker every 10th stitch. And this way you can maintain your count. It keeps everything consistent, and you don't have to spend too much time thinking about it. So then the next 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay. Just to show you quickly. So right here, my tension got a little loose, and you can now see that in the stitch. You can see where these 2 stitches right here are not as consistent as all my other stitches, and that's where my tension got loose. So now I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. I'm going to put another stitch marker there. And I'll do just a few more. So you've got the first stitch, 1, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, and pull through. I'm going to end this piece right here for the moment. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the difference between the stitches of this piece done on a hook that, regardless of what it says on the side, actually measured out to be 4 millimeters, or the true size G, to a hook that says it's a size G but is a little bigger than a size G. So we'll begin. So when I do my slip stitch, I have the tail of the yarn in front, and then I'll move it behind that tail, and then I'll pull it up over the hook, over the front of the hook, and then I'll grab the yarn and I'll pull it through to create my slip knot. And then with a larger hook, I'm going to, with my thumb and my middle finger, I'm going to hold my tail once again, and I'm going to do a yarn over and grab my yarn and pull it through. And I'm going to grab my yarn and pull it through. And again, and again, and again, and again, and again. Yarn over and pull through. Yarn over and pull through. So now I'm going to show you the difference between the tightness of the stitches. So I think you can kind of see that. The stitching with the chain stitches with the larger needle gives you a larger, more loose chain, where the hook that actually measured a true 4 millimeter size, regardless of what size is printed on the front of it, is a tighter chain. So at this point, what I would like you to do is I would like you to just spend time making a long chain, getting used to your tension, getting used to making consistent stitches, getting used to working with the hook, figuring out whether a knife grip works for you or whether a pencil grip works best for you. There's a lot of little things that go into play, especially in the beginning. While it's not very exciting just to do chain stitches, it's incredibly important. The consistency of your chain stitch can mean the difference between a very good and polished finished piece and a piece that looks like you're just learning how to crochet.